All right, so imagine this. You could hop online and just order anything like drugs, weapons, even fake passports.
Wow.
It sounds crazy, but we're talking about a real place
Yeah.
called the Silk Road, this hidden corner of the internet where all sorts of shady dealings went down.
Yeah, this case is really fascinating because it kind of throws a spotlight on that whole world of online crime.
Right.
Back when the Silk Road was running, it really felt like the Wild West out there on the internet,
Yeah.
with very few rules and just a whole lot of anonymity.
And to make things even more interesting, the guy behind it all, Ross Ulbricht, was recently pardoned by President Trump. So we're diving into a stack of news articles, court documents, even some forum posts from the Silk Road itself to try to understand this whole thing.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's unravel this digital mystery.
Yeah, so first things first, who is Ross Ulbricht?
Mm.
On paper, he seems like an unlikely kingpin. We're talking Eagle Scout physics student, brilliant programmer.
Yeah, you don't exactly picture that when you think digital drug lord.
Right? Doesn't really add up. But that's where things get interesting.
Yeah, from what I've read, it seems like he was a deeply idealistic person.
Okay.
A big believer in libertarian principles, And I think he saw the Silk Road as a way to create this truly free market where you could operate outside the reach of government regulations.
Oh, so kind of like a statement.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he sets up this marketplace hidden in the dark web, calls himself the Dread Pirate Roberts.
I love that.
Pretty clever name, right?
It is, yeah. Like right out of The Princess Bride.
Totally.
Yeah.
But this was no fairy tale. I mean, Ulbricht's creation, the Silk Road, became a massive online black market.
And to understand how that even worked, you kind of have to understand the technology behind it.
Yeah, break it down for us.
Okay, so the Silk Road operated on the dark web, which is this part of the internet that's intentionally hidden.
Okay.
And it requires special software to even get to. And then it relies on this network called Tor, which bounces your communications through multiple servers around the world, making it very difficult to trace your online activity.
So it's like a secret internet within the internet with a built-in cloaking device.
Yeah, you could say that.
No wonder it was so hard for law enforcement to track these guys down.
Right.
And then there's this whole thing with Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency that was used on the Silk Road.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't fully understand how that all works.
Yeah, well, think of Bitcoin as like digital cash that's decentralized.
Yeah.
Meaning it's not controlled by any government or financial institution.
Uh-huh.
So that made it really attractive for Silk Road users because transactions could be made anonymously without leaving a traditional paper trail.
Okay. Starting to see how the pieces fit together.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this hidden marketplace using super secret technology and untraceable digital cash.
Right.
Sounds like the perfect recipe for criminal activity.
Yeah, unfortunately it was. And the Silk Road quickly became a hotbed for all sorts of illicit trade. I mean, drugs were the main attraction.
Yeah.
But you could also find weapons, stolen credit card information, counterfeit documents, even hacking tools.
Oh, wow. So that really ran the gamut.
It did.
Wow. And Ulbricht, this idealistic libertarian, was profiting from all of this.
Yeah. From the sources we have, it looks like he was making millions of dollars.
Wow. That's quite the conflict of interest there.
Yeah, for sure.
But the party couldn't last forever, right?
No, it couldn't. By 2013, the FBI had launched a massive investigation into the Silk Road, and they were determined to unmask the Dread Pirate Roberts and bring down his digital empire, with agents using all kinds of sophisticated surveillance techniques to try to track him down.
Uh-huh. And then, bam, the FBI raids a library in San Francisco and arrests Ulbricht. His laptop is seized, and it's basically game over for the Silk Road.
It was a dramatic takedown. Ulbricht's laptop basically became a treasure trove of evidence for them.
Right.
I mean, not only did it have all these detailed records of Silk Road chilling chat logs that kind of revealed a much darker side to Ulbricht.
That's right. The ones that suggest that he might have been involved in something way more sinister than just running an online black market.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about online contract killings or like murder for hire.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where this case takes a very unsettling turn.
So let's unpack this.
Hmm.
What exactly is an online contract killing? And is it even possible to hire a hitman on the dark web?
Right.
Okay, so before we get into like the whole murder for hire thing, I'm still stuck on the fact that someone could create a whole marketplace like the Silk Road.
Yeah.
I mean, how did this even stay under the radar for so long?
Well, the early days of the dark web were like a digital Wild West. It was a haven for all these tech-savvy people who valued their privacy, operate outside of the traditional systems of control. And I think law enforcement was just playing catch-up at that point. They were struggling to understand this new frontier and how to police it.
But even with like all the anonymity, wouldn't people be wary of getting scammed? How do you know you're actually going to get what you paid for on the Silk Road?
Right, that's a great question. Actually, the Silk Road had this surprisingly sophisticated system for building trust and reducing risk.
Interesting.
Yeah, they had things like escrow services, so the money would be held by a third party until the goods were delivered.
Okay.
Kind of like an online middleman.
Uh-huh.
And then they had this whole reputation system. Buyers and sellers could rate each other.
Interesting.
Similar to what you see on eBay or Amazon.
So they were essentially trying to create like a legitimate marketplace, just with illegal goods.
Yeah, in a way, Ulbricht seemed to genuinely believe that he was creating this more free and fair system, But obviously, the nature of what was being sold made it inherently criminal.
Right, of course. So as the Silk Road grew in popularity, it started attracting attention from law enforcement all over the world. I mean, the FBI was on the case, but I imagine it wasn't easy for them to crack this thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It was really tough because you have to remember we're talking about a network that was specifically designed for anonymity.
Right.
So agents had to use this combination of traditional investigative techniques and then all this new cutting-edge digital forensic to kind of piece together this puzzle.
Wow.
They were tracking Bitcoin transactions, analyzing chat logs, and just trying to find vulnerabilities in the Tor network.
It sounds like something straight out of a movie.
Yeah, it does.
But they eventually got their man right. Ulbricht was arrested, and the Silk Road was shut down. So case closed.
Well, not quite. Remember those chat logs we mentioned earlier? The ones that suggested he might have been involved in hiring hitmen?
Oh, yeah.
Well, those kind of added a whole other layer of complexity to the case.
Okay, so let's get into that. What exactly did the investigators find on Ulbricht's laptop?
Well, they found messages where Ulbricht was allegedly communicating with people that he believed to be hitmen.
Okay.
And he was discussing potential targets and negotiating prices for their elimination.
Hold on, so he was actually trying to have people killed?
Well, that's what the prosecution argued.
Wow.
They presented these chat logs as evidence that he was a dangerous criminal who was willing to go to extreme lengths to protect his empire.
Well, wait, how do we even know that those hitmen were real? Couldn't they have been scammers or undercover agents?
Right, that's a really important point.
Yeah.
Ulbricht's defense team actually argued that he was a victim of an elaborate scam.
Oh, wow.
That he was being set up by people who were either trying to extort him or who were working with law enforcement.
So it's like a classic he said, she said situation.
Yeah, pretty much. We have these chat logs, but we don't know for sure who was on the other end of those conversations.
And that makes it impossible to really know the truth.
Yeah, and that ambiguity made it really difficult for anyone to figure out what actually happened. Ulbricht was actually never formally charged with any murders for hire.
Oh, really?
No.
But the judge still considered those allegations when it came to sentencing, right?
He did, and that's where things get a little controversial.
Yeah.
The judge factored in the alleged murder for hire plots when he gave Ulbricht that life sentence.
Yeah, that seems really harsh, especially since he was never even convicted of those crimes.
A lot of people agree with that. Even some people who felt that he deserved to be punished for his role on the Silk Road argued that the judge's decision set this dangerous precedent that allowed these unproven allegations to basically influence sentencing in a way that could undermine due process.
I see what you mean.
And then just to add another layer of complexity to all of this, President Trump pardons Ulbricht, effectively wiping his slate clean.
Yeah. Right. So we're left with this unresolved question. Was Ulbricht a cold-blooded killer who basically got away with murder? Or was he this naive idealist who just got caught up in something way over his head and became the victim of an elaborate frame-up?
It's a question that's fueled so many debates and has really divided public opinion.
Yeah, I can see why.
And the truth is, we may never know the full story, but I think one thing is clear. Ulbricht's story is a reminder that the dark web is a complex and dangerous place.
Yeah.
Where the lines between reality and deception can be incredibly blurry.
So what happened to this Silk Road after Ulbricht's arrest? Did it just disappear?
Well, the authorities shut down the original Silk Road, but it didn't take long for copycat sites to pop up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like that old saying, nature abhors a vacuum. The demand was still there for these illegal goods and services.
So new players were just ready to fill the void.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to the broader implications of the Silk Road story. It wasn't just about one man or one website. It was a wake-up call for law enforcement agencies all over the world. I mean, the Silk Road really exposed the potential and the perils of this whole digital frontier.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this goes way beyond just buying drugs online. We're talking about a whole underworld operating in the shadows of the internet, its own currency and its own unique set of challenges for law enforcement.
Right, and it raises some fundamental questions about how we police the internet, how we balance security and privacy in the digital age,
Yeah,
and, how we hold individuals accountable for their actions online.
this is heavy stuff.
Oh.
But I'm guessing this isn't just like an abstract philosophical debate. This has real-world consequences, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the dark web has become this hub for all sorts of drug trafficking, weapons sales, money laundering, identity theft, you name it.
Wow.
And as technology keeps evolving, the stakes just keep getting higher.
So where do we go from here? What lessons can we learn from the Silk Road story?
Well, for starters, it highlights the need for greater digital literacy.
Okay.
We need to understand how the dark web works, what the risks are, and the steps we can take to protect ourselves.
So like not clicking on suspicious links, using strong passwords, and being careful about what information we share online.
Exactly. And it also underscores the importance of collaboration between law enforcement technology companies and policymakers.
Yeah.
We need to develop new tools and new strategies for combating cybercrime while also protecting privacy and free speech.
So it's like a delicate balancing act.
It is, but it's one we can't afford to ignore.
Right. And speaking of things we can't ignore, we should talk about the role of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, the Silk Road was one of the first major cases that showed how these cryptocurrencies could be used to facilitate illegal transactions.
It was, and it sent shockwaves through the financial world.
Yeah.
Suddenly, regulators and law enforcement were faced with this new form of digital cash that was decentralized, difficult to trace, and just seemingly tailor-made for criminal activity.
So what's being done about it? Is there any way to regulate these cryptocurrencies without, like, stifling innovation?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
Some countries have taken a really hard line, banning or heavily restricting the use of cryptocurrency. Others are trying to find ways to regulate them without stifling their potential benefits.
So it's like a tricky situation. I'm guessing this debate's going to continue for a while.
It definitely is, and as cryptocurrencies become more mainstream, the stakes are just going to get higher.
Right.
We're going to need to find ways to balance innovation with security privacy with accountability.
Yeah.
And it's going to require a lot of careful thought and collaboration.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from like the rise and fall of the Silk Road to the whole dark world of contract killings, the evolution of the dark web, and the challenges of regulating cryptocurrency. It's a lot to digest.
It is. I want to emphasize that the Silk Road story is far from over.
Right.
The challenges that it exposed, like the dark side of the internet, the evolving nature of crime, the power and peril of cryptocurrencies, those are all still with us today.
And I have a feeling they're only going to become more complex and more urgent as technology keeps advancing.
You're absolutely right. And that's why it's so important to stay informed, to think critically about the information that we encounter online, and to have these thoughtful conversations about the kind of future that we want to create.
Yeah, well said. Really eye-opening.
Yeah.
I mean, who knew there was so much going on beneath the surface of the internet?
I know, right?
It's like we've been exploring this hidden world.
It really is a bit like that, isn't it? I think the Silk Road story really pulls back the curtain on a lot of things that we tend to take for granted.
Yeah.
Like, anonymity, privacy, the power of technology.
And the whole thing with Ulbricht is just so fascinating. And he goes from this idealistic physics student to a digital drug lord, potentially even involved in these murder-for-hire plots.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's like a story ripped from the headlines.
It is.
But it also raises so many questions about morality, justice, and the very nature of identity in the digital age.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking about how our online personas can sometimes become detached from our real-world selves.
Right.
Like, Ulbricht was seemingly this normal guy in his everyday life, but online he transformed into the Dread Pirate Roberts, operating in this shadowy world with a completely different set of rules.
And that's what's so unsettling about the dark web, right?
Yeah.
It's like this parallel universe where people can do things they would never dream of doing in the real world,
Right.
sometimes with real-world consequences.
Yeah, the anonymity that the dark web provides can be both liberating and dangerous. It allows people to express themselves freely, to connect with others who share their interests, to access information that might be censored or restricted elsewhere. But it also creates opportunities for criminal activity, for exploitation, and for the darkest impulses of human nature to just run unchecked.
It's like the internet is holding up this mirror to humanity,
Yeah.
showing us both like our best and our worst qualities.
Mm-hmm.
And as technology advances, that reflection is only going to become more complex and more challenging to decipher.
You're right, and that's why the story is so relevant even all these years later. It forces us to confront the ethical and societal implications of this digital revolution that we're all living through.
So where do we go from here? How do we navigate this increasingly complex digital landscape?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to cultivate a sense of digital literacy. We need to understand how these technologies work, what the risks are.
Right, so like learning about online privacy, cybersecurity, the dangers of misinformation. We need this whole new set of skills just to navigate the digital world safely and responsibly.
You do. And we also need to have these open and honest conversations about, what kind of online world do we want to create? One that's free and open, but also safe and ethical. One that promotes innovation, but also protects individual rights and fosters a sense of community.
Those are big questions,
They are.
but they're ones that we can't really afford to ignore.
We can't. And I guess there's no easy answer, right? It's an ongoing process, a constant balancing act.
Right.
But the more we learn, the more we discuss, the more we engage with these issues, the better equipped we'll be to shape the future of the internet in a way that benefits all of us.
Yeah, it's a bit daunting, but also exciting. Like we're pioneers exploring this vast new frontier full of possibilities and potential pitfalls.
That's a great way to put it. And just like those early explorers, we need to proceed with caution, curiosity, and a sense of shared responsibility.
Well said. Thank you for joining us as we explored the fascinating and often unsettling world of Ross Ulbricht and the Silk Road.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep learning.